We all experience fear and doubt at times, but we must push through it if we're going to be successful. And that is why we've got a special guest today, and he's going to share his foolproof system to alleviate fear and doubt so you can reach peak performance. Hi, I am Tim Fitzpatrick with Rialto Marketing, where we believe marketing shouldn't be difficult. All you need is the right plan. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. I am really excited to have with me John Davis, the corporate action hero. John, welcome and thanks for taking the time.
Oh, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me. It's going to be really fun, I think.
Yes, I am looking forward to this. You've got some really cool things to share with us today. Before we dig into that, got some rapid fire questions just to help us get to know you a little bit better. You ready to jump in?
Whenever you're ready, let's go for it.
Okay, let's do it. When you're not working, how do you like to spend your time?
Wherever my son is and whatever we can do together, that's how I like to spend my time.
Okay.
He's my favorite person, so that's what I do.
Awesome. I love it. What's your hidden talent?
I am a painter.
Oh, wow.
That's one of my paintings right there.
Damn, I never would have guessed. That's pretty darn good.
Hey, well, thank you.
So are you official? You signing your name on the bottom of the painting?
Sign my name and the whole bit, yeah.
Okay.
I've been painting since I was 11 years old.
Wow. That is a talent.
I'm kidding.
That is a talent I never had. So I'm always envious. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
A very good friend of mine, Dan Thurman, he's one of the top keynote speakers in the world right now. I asked him one time, I said, Dan, when did you become successful? He said, I became successful when I stopped doing everything else. And he says, when you stop doing all those things that you're not really focused on making successful is when you're going to become successful.
Love it. So you got to focus on those few key elements that are really going to get you to where you want to be.
Absolutely.
Awesome. What's one thing about you that surprises people other than being a painter?
All right. I used to be the lead singer of an a cappella group called the Acapellars, and I sang the high parts.
The Acapellars. I love it. How long did you do that?
We did that for a couple of years, and we sang in beach bars from my hometown of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. We used to go out, and there's the four of us who'd go out, and we'd work our harmonies up and go do, Under the Boardwalk and 16 Candles and Sloop John B. And we'd do all that kind of fun stuff. It was so lovely. I had so much fun doing that.
Now, how old were you when you were doing that?
Oh, that was I was legal to drink at that time because that's how we loosened ourselves up to go on stage. So I would say 20s, in my 20s.
Okay, cool. Little liquid courage, and then you were ready to sing.
Right, and that's why I was still doing the high parts.
It's funny. What does success mean to you?
It's interesting because I find the word success and the word freedom to be interchangeable. I think that if you are truly successful, you're free to do the things that you'd like to do in life, free to live where you want to live, free of debt. So I think freedom is really the key to success. People, the lack of mental stress of anything that's negative. Yeah. I had a guest recently that said to me, choice. Success is about choice. All very in a similar vein, right? It's you've got freedom to make the choices that you want to make, rather than feeling like you have no choices. Completely agree with that sentiment.
Yeah. Absolutely. Where's your happy place?
My happy place is anywhere where there's water and sand. So put me on a beach. You put me on a beach with I have a Jeep, and you put me on a Jeep and out in the middle of nowhere, and I'm as happy as I can possibly be.
Hey, that's awesome. What qualities do you look for and value in the people that you spend time with?
Number one, honesty. Number two, a sense of humor. And they can be interchangeable depending on if the joke is good enough.
Yeah. So before we dig into talking about peak performance, just share a little bit more about you, what you're doing, how you're helping people. You got a very interesting background. So share away, man.
Yeah, I have a very, very, very strange background when it comes to working with corporations. I was a stuntman, a fight director, a college professor, an artistic director of theme parks, and now I'm a professional keynote speaker. And what I do is I go into organizations who are going through change or adversity or starting new initiatives, and I awaken the interaction here in their team. I get them empowered. I shorten their learning curves. I get them more productive, and I get them reaching their goals more swiftly. And I do that with fun interactive programs and bullwhips and nunchucks and world-class comedy.
So it's a fun experience to go through. It's not one of these boring humdrum events.
Absolutely, and there is no PowerPoint in one of my programs. It's an in-the-room interactive experience, and it's specifically, when you turn on a PowerPoint presentation and you split the audience's focus, psychologically, you actually are splitting their mind to a point where they're actually going into a state of trance, which is why when the screen goes on, the telephones come out, and the texting starts happening because they're so split focused that they're shut down the part of the brain that holds for content retention, and so I don't make them give them the moment where they can have that experience. They're too afraid I'm going to pick them and drag them on stage.
So have you? How have you had to shift with the pandemic? Can you do these things virtually or?
Absolutely. It's been really interesting. My system, I use my system daily. I don't, I'm not just the president, I'm also a member. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
See how it is?
Yes.
I use my system because it works, and I found my system because of some things that happened in my life. But when the pandemic hit, I had to manage my own fears. I had to leverage my present moment and move forward. So it happened, and just like the Marvel blip, half the speakers went away and all the business, right? So suddenly I was in this situation where, what can I do? So I always look at adversity as an opportunity.
Yeah.
So when it happened, I said, okay, what's the opportunity? I upped my video game. I got my video studio set up here. I got my larger studio on the other side of the house. I really upped my game. I started doing virtual events all the time. Love it, by the way, because the year before COVID, I traveled over 200 days. And so now I'm doing, I can do half of my work right now in my underwear, which is great.
Yeah. So you've got on a black shirt and underwear, but we can only see the black shirt.
Right. It's a onesie.
Yeah. That's awesome. So how did you come up with this corporate action hero? Why do you call yourself that?
It's a great question. The word action means to create motion, start momentum, or to do something. And the word hero is someone who achieves extraordinary results in service of others. And I put together a comedy sword fighting show called Hack and Slash. And that show went all over the world, including the front lines of Iraq and Afghanistan on 6 USO tours. And I had the opportunity to really see action heroes at play. And I wanted to give back. And what happened was I discovered after years of doing that show that I was enjoying the time after the show more than I was on the time on stage, because after the show I was taking the things I learned about how to create peak performances in my own life and helping other people achieve, them in their life. And I can't tell you how many people today tell me I saved their marriages, I got them new jobs, and it wasn't me, of course, it was them awakening their power, but I said the right thing at the right time. And so I said, how can I come up with a job where I can actively help people achieve more in their life and live those really amazing lives, dynamic lives that they want to live, and also get to play with bullwhips and nunchucks?
Yeah.
Because that's fun too, right? And
yes.
do comedy. So I said, well, let's create something. And I said, now, first of all, where do people need the most attention? Well, in corporate America, they struggle in those jobs, and they get into that space of that beat down mentality. And I'm like, if they could be empowered, they could do so much more. So I started promoting myself to corporations to go out there and be the corporate action hero in their environment. And what I do is I come in and I do these amazing events. And let me just give you a quick example using that 5F system and as a leader, because the 5F system is based on the fight or flight response, and we'll talk about that later, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's based on that hacking the primal fight or flight response. And it's a response that everyone has. And so because it's a response that everyone has, you can use it as a leader because you can guide them through. You can use it as a salesperson because you're guiding the client through, and you can use it personally. And so what I do to end one of my big keynote speeches, because I do multiple speeches, my main keynote speech, the Corporate Action Hero speech, I pick the most timid person I can find in my audience. I bring them to the stage, and leading them through the 5S system, they learn to crack a whip and take targets out of my hand with that whip in under 5 minutes.
Okay, I can't wait to see it.
Nothing has ever happened.
Yeah, you have most of your fingers left.
Most of them. I'm back.
That's interesting. So, I mean, it sounds like you've really you've created a business around your talents and your expertise,
and my passions.
Yeah, and your passions, and that's awesome, because I think that's where we succeed most, is when we love what we're doing and we're adding value doing it.
Do what you love, and money will come.
Yes. So you had mentioned, your past a little bit. We talked about that. Was there a pivotal moment on your career path that you feel is responsible for, your success and where you've been able to get to today?
Absolutely. As I said, I was a stuntman and a fight director. But before I was a stuntman and a fight director, I was a young kid who always had a stick in his hand, pretending it was a sword, running in the woods.
Okay.
I wanted to be a young Errol Flynn, right? And that sort of manifested into the idea of becoming an actual stuntman and a fight director. And I was working at Renaissance festivals, and I met two of the top fight directors in the world, and started having really amazing experiences. They were training me for free, and I was really getting a lot of positive reinforcement in my life. They were telling me that I had talent, and I was, going for my black belt, and everything was going great, and I was big and strong and buff. And in those days, I had long Fabio hair, and then later on, it started sliding backwards, and I had Ben Franklin hair. But I ended up. A buddy of mine said, "Hey, can you come over to my house and help me unload my van?" And I said, "Sure, no problem." Well, my friend was a professional potter. He made beautiful pottery. And I got out to his house, and his van was filled with 80-pound boxes of clay. Now, for me, at this point in my life, I was like, good, another workout, 80-pound boxes of clay. All I'm doing is working out my muscles, right? And I climbed up in that van, all excited to move those 80-pound boxes of clay. And I picked up that first box, and I turned to set that box outside of the van, and my spine split in two. And let me say that again, my spine split in two. When I twisted with the extra 80 pounds of weight, the upper part of my spine broke off the bottom part of my spine, and I collapsed. They took me to the hospital. They told me, "John, you have a condition known as spina bifida occulta," to which I promptly said, "Gesundheit."
Yeah.
I had no idea what that was. Basically, what that means is 3 of my vertebrae never formed properly at birth, and they were just these wonky little pieces of mush there. And when I twisted with the extra 80 pounds that day, I literally unscrewed my upper part of my body from my lower part of my body and pinched off my spinal column and was paralyzed. And
oh man,
doctor told me flat out, he says, I don't know whether you'll ever walk again, but if you do, you will never have a physical career. Basically, throw all your dreams away. And that's a hard moment to come through. And I'll be totally honest with you and say I went to some very dark places at that time because I really wanted to end everything. And a friend of mine came in and gave me what, if looking back on it, could look like a really cruel joke, but it was not a really cruel joke. It was the best thing he could have done for me. He gave me a book called The Tao of Jeet Kune Do by Bruce Lee. So he gave the martial artist who's just been told he'll never do martial arts again a martial arts book by the greatest martial artist that ever lived. Right?
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, this sounds like a really cruel joke. But as I read that book, and I was very into my martial arts at that time, as I read that book, I realized this book is about his philosophy of martial arts and his philosophy behind things. And so I read into it some things that were very interesting. One of the things was staying very present, your present moment. The other thing was that you have to remain mentally flexible at all times. And when an adversity comes up, you have to remain completely flexible. And that you are responsible for your outcomes. And so I had to take that moment and go, okay, I could take what this doctor says as my belief in my outcome, or I can grab a hold of my own belief in my outcome and start leveraging my present moments. So what I started doing was that day when the doctor told me I couldn't, well, actually it was about a week or so after the doctor told me I couldn't, I read that book, and then I said, okay, so today I'm just going to flex my upper back muscles. And I literally just took that moment to flex my upper back muscles, and I slowly moved down the back. And then about 3 weeks after I started, I flexed my hips. The doctors were blown away because it was below the injury. They didn't think I'd ever be able to move my hips again. And at day 30, I was able to push myself up and sit on the edge of the bed. By 6 months, I was walking up and walking around. At a year, I was back to what I would consider a normal human, not my buff, rock-hard, masculine self, but but at least back to a normal function. And a year and 6 months, I gave myself a gift. I climbed up on top of a 3-story tower, and I jumped off into a fall pad. And then I went on to do over 4,000 live comedy sword fighting stunt shows all over the world. I have worked in movies. I was, movie stars, and I do whips and nunchucks and gun spinning, and I do all this physical stuff for over 30 years after that. And it's all because of the fact that mindset that happened in that moment, that injury showed me. Now, here's the other thing. I did all those cool things, but I also knew at that point, because of that I can achieve anything.
Yeah.
I went to 30 countries. I climbed Mount Sinai. I climbed Mount Machu Picchu. I was in the pyramids of Giza. I have done more things than most people will do in 5 lifetimes in this lifetime. And it was all because I knew I could, and I took my present moment and leveraged it properly.
That is a crazy story.
Yeah, tell me about it.
And
Crazy
I
for
can,
me too.
Yeah, geez. I mean, I can only imagine what was going through your head at that point, as you're like lifting this box of clay and all of a sudden you're just down.
Yeah.
So did they have to like fuse vertebrae together? What did they do?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because they wanted to fuse it and put a pin in my back, and I refused. And the reason I refused is because I had set a goal to be a stuntman and a fight director. And once you fuse the back or put a pin in the back, you've created a rigid point of your back, and you can't do falls or rolls. So what I started doing was, number one, I started with chiropractic. I had a chiropractor in every day doing adjustments to keep my spine in place. But then I started doing yoga and working out my back muscles, basically. And still today, as we sit here, I still have the condition, but I walk every day. I flex my back every day. I do something with my back every day. And there have been a couple times, I would say since that time, about probably 10 times, that my back had popped out, but not to the point of being paralyzed again, but something that knocked me down for a week or two.
Yeah.
Over those years. But the interesting thing was, they never happened on a show day. They never happened when I was going to perform.
It's good timing.
And of me and my comedy partner, I am the only one who never missed a show.
What's his excuse?
We don't want to go there. Let's put it this way: he never had a traumatic injury or any issues like that.
Okay,
it was personal stuff. For
yeah. Oh man. So let's talk about these 5 Fs as you framed them. What are these 5 Fs in helping us achieve peak performance? Let's break it down.
All right, so the 5 Fs, as I said earlier, are based upon the fight or flight response, the natural primal response that we all have. And these protocols, when you look at them, are just really how to hack that response. So let's talk about the first one. The first one is fearlessness. Now, when we talk about fearlessness, you can't really talk about being fearless until you talk about what fear itself is.
Yeah.
So I ask audiences all over the world, what is fear? And the response, what usually happens is the room goes silent, and because nobody can come up with a real good answer, and then somebody in the back of the room will say the pat response: false evidence appearing real.
Yeah.
right. And so they'll say false evidence, but I don't buy it. I don't believe that is the truth, because when you break down fear scientifically, fear is an emotional reaction to some future event that may or may not happen
Yeah.
with you focused on a negative outcome. So it breaks down even further to negatively focused uncertainty. And so that's all fear really is. But the issue is people get inside their fear. They say they're in fear. Well, when you're psychologically inside something, you can't control it. So the first thing people have to do is recognize they're in fear. Easiest way to recognize if you're in fear is, how are you breathing? If you don't feel like you can get a deep breath, that's usually because you're in some sort of fear, right? The interesting thing about that statement is, it's not that they can't breathe. It's that their body is having a primal response that's making them store air so they can run further and faster. So it's not, so they literally are holding air in, not being able to get air. And actors on Broadway are trained that if they're on stage, they forget all their lines. They're literally trained to exhale and relax all their muscles, and all their lines rush back into their head because they shut off the primal fear response, and their cognitive thinking brain turns back on, right? So if you're in a fear response, first of all, label it. I'm in fear. Recognize that it's in fear.
Yeah.
Understand that it's not a bad thing. Recognizing it is a really good thing. So you go, I'm in fear. Then take that moment to exhale. And then realize, since it is about a future event, it's not here right now. So you can take this moment and deal with whatever you got to do. Now, when I was on the front lines of Iraq and Afghanistan, I talked to soldiers. I said, how can you go out and go into these situations? And they said exactly the same thing, that they would exhale and get relaxed. But then they said something really interesting. They said, but it's easy for us to also break our fear cycle because we have an objective. They have something to focus on. That brings us to number 2, fearlessly focus. That focus is important. The interesting thing about focus, we kind of talked about this earlier. You can positively focus or you can negatively focus, right? If I'm positively focused, my subconscious mind is trained to show me whatever I focus on. And I can prove it to you. I'm a big Jeep fan. I have Jeeps. I've had 6 of them in my life. And I love Jeeps. When I drive down the road, I see every Jeep that's on the road, including the Jeeps that are in driveways, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, my conscious choice is Jeeps, so I see Jeeps. And it's the same for most people. If they decide they want to buy a certain kind of car, they start seeing that kind of car everywhere, right?
Yeah.
It's because they consciously chose. So their subconscious mind has 2 jobs. One, to show them the pathway towards what they focus on, which is what we're just talking about. And 2, to store subconscious memories of present moments, which creates a underlying subconscious belief. So you've got these 2 jobs back here, right? The other thing is that when you're focusing on a goal, a lot of times you can get out of your own timeline and look at that goal as something that you have to get to, and you have to go, you want to be in the future. But the way the brain works is you can't go to the future. You can only stay right here. So your job is to make small present moment successes. Get very focused on making your present moments positive and successful. And then what happens is that big thing comes to you and surrounds your present moment experience. What's also cool about that is these present moment successes you're creating are creating successful present moments behind you.
Yeah.
So your subconscious belief is changing as well. So the more positively you focus, the more everything in your life changes for the better. And it's just amazing change. You get fearlessly in focus. The next one, if you look at number 5, the middle one is the one that holds the 2 on either side up. It's the pivotal one, right? And it's faith, belief, confidence. Do you believe you can do it? My son and I, when he was 6 years old, we have a Nerf crossbow. Are you a Nerf fan? You have a Nerf fan?
I was when I was a kid. I have girls now, so we don't play with those.
Oh, the Nerf crossbow, I have to share this now. It is the most accurate Nerf weapon that was ever made. It's amazing. You can hit your target anytime, anywhere. My son at 6 could hit the target every time, anywhere. And we had a game we used to play. It went like this. One of us would sit on the couch in the living room, shoot across the living room floor, and hit the side of the trash can in the kitchen. And it would go ping, and my son would laugh, right? And so he'd hit it, but he could hit it every time, right? And then I would get up and it would be my turn to shoot, and I'd shoot the wall and the floor and the ceiling and him and anything but the trash can because he was 6, right? I wanted him to win, right?
Yeah.
About the 4th or 5th time, he starts laughing. I said, why are you laughing, kind of? He says, Dad, I know why you miss. I said, why? He says, because you don't believe you're going to hit it. you have to believe it. You have to have faith in your outcome. You have to believe that the things that you've set are going to happen no matter what. I am going to be a stuntman was what got me out of that bed, right? And if you break it out into spirituality, I'm a spiritual person in the sense that I was raised Catholic, but my mom told me to study everything and find my own personal journey. And Buddha says, what you think you become, you create your world. Gandhi says, you must be the change you want to see in the world. Krishna said, you are the culmination of your thought. And Jesus said, whatever you ask in God's name is granted. And Moses said, God's name was I am. So if I am going to be a stuntman, that's asking. That's asking. So for me, I'm very much into my I am statements. I am this. I don't believe in affirmations because I believe the word of affirmation itself means you're trying to shore something up that's not solid. And that's the belief behind that word. I believe in declarations, right? And I took certain words out of my vocabulary. Wanting, needing, hoping, and trying, gone, right? So we got fearlessly, focused with faith. The next one is the hard one. It's the hardest of all of them. And it's follow through. Follow through. Actually getting off the couch and doing something. You actually have to do it because your present moment is filled with three things: thought, word, and deed. And thought and word without deed is just daydreaming. You have to do the actions to make the momentum move. You have to do the things. If I didn't flex my muscles, then I never would have gotten out of the bed. I had to do think it, say it, and do it. So the more I put that focus behind it and then had the faith and then took an action, I started to see exponential change in my life. And I was able to go on and achieve amazing things in my life. So far we got fearlessly focused with faith and follow through.
Have you ever read the book, The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson?
No.
One of the things he talks about in there, and it's similar to, taking action, is he's like, you just need to show up. If you show up every day, you put yourself far ahead of the vast majority of people. It's that little action of showing up that differentiates so many people. It's so easy to not show up. It's so easy to show up. You just need to choose which one you're going to do and do it consistently.
And it's really easy to be there and still not show up.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? It's easy to be there and hand off power to somebody else. And the reality of it is that when I directed theme parks, I got known as the guy who could save your theme park. I would come in on parks that were failing and I would bring them back. And the way that would work is I would come in and I would assess the team. I would assess where they are. I wouldn't change anything when I first got there. I would just really look at it. And then most of the time what I found was there was a small set of egos at the top. And the egos were keeping 5 other people below that one person down. And now to these 5 other people, that person was the greatest, and there's no way this thing will function without them because that's the story they've been told by that person. And when I fire that person, they go, "What are you doing? You're going to destroy the thing." I said, "No." And I just started empowering them. And next thing you know, I have 5 that are as good as he was, right? And so, and you do that across the board. What happens is we had one of the parks that I took over had a 60% growth in a year. And it was just by changing the dynamic inside the structure of the team. Yeah. The team structure is huge. I say any business is as strong as its weakest attitude, right? Because you've got to make sure everybody's attitude's in play, right? And attitude comes from faith, belief, confidence. Yeah. And so that's hugely important, right? And then by taking that person out of the loop, these 5 were able to take actions and do the follow through, which is amazing, right?
Yeah, I love it.
Now the last of the 5 F's is the one we kind of started on in our conversation, and it's an interesting one because something when you're trying to achieve anything and you're taking your actions, you're moving towards a goal, something is always going to come up that seems contrary to what you're trying to achieve, and at that moment you can choose to stop, or you can choose to remain flexible and work with what's been given you, right? As Bruce Lee would say, you could choose to be like water. You flow around or over or through. You have that power. For me, understanding how the subconscious mind works was really powerful because I consciously chose a goal, and when things would come up that would seem contrary, to what I was trying to achieve, I never took my eye off the goal because I knew that if I focus on a goal consciously, my subconscious mind was going to show me things to achieve it. So when something would come up, I would think of it as, oh, this is being shown to me because I need to address it to get to my goal. I never said, oh, this is being shown to me to prove me I can't get my goal, because that's losing faith in the goal, right?
Right.
So I need to stay in this thing. But there's a famous Shakespeare quote: "There's nothing good nor bad, but thinking makes it so." So some adversity comes up, you can think of it as a positive. Now, I can tell you, for in my own life, when an adversity comes up, I either had to incorporate it into what I was doing, I had to address it to get it solved, or I just had to say, okay, that's no longer important. And break. Those are the three real choices, right? Sometimes you really have to address it, and you have to get into it deep. But sometimes you can literally say, okay, we're not doing that anymore, and just push it aside.
Yeah.
But you never take your eye off the goal. You never, if you consciously choose something, Robin Williams once said, when they asked him, that's one of my favorite quotes of all time. So he said, would you ever do a Mork and Mindy reunion? And his response was, you don't look backwards if you're trying to move forward, or you just run into a tree.
Yeah.
Right? The cool thing about that statement is that when I fired that one guy who was really good, I can guarantee you within a week he's going to call me and come back, want a meeting, because he's going to want to come back because he was in a position of power and he wants that power back, right? And he would come to my office and he would come in the room, and I would say, I'm so glad we have a chance to have this conversation. We can both learn from this experience, I think. But before we start talking, I just need to tell you, I never go back on my decisions. What do you want to talk about? and then usually I hear something about my mother, and then and some interesting things. Or sometimes I've had some really productive conversations out of it too, which has been great. I love being in those kinds of situations. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for somebody is be a consequence, because the consequence, and if you're clear enough to know that this is good for them, no matter what they you can do, it's great, So I had to remain flexible. So when I was going through my experience, there were days that my back didn't want to work, and I had to realize, okay, well, today might be a day that I just need to rest my back because I worked it hard yesterday, and that can be an action too.
Yeah.
So I had to keep my eye on the outcome and stay fearlessly focused with faith and follow through. Now, if you're a leader, guiding someone through this process is as simple as watching their fear responses. And you can always tell when somebody's having a fear response because their body gets tight, right? And they start saying things. Other thing is, as a leader, if you start listening to what people are saying about their present moment, what they're saying about their I am moment, you can understand exactly where they are and what they're creating. And if you can change that perspective of that I am moment, then you can change everything in that experience, right? So you can get them fearlessly focused. When I had the lady with the whip, I was constantly alleviating her fear. The first fear she had when she hit the stage is that she's suddenly in front of thousands of people that she knows, right? And I already said she's timid. She's a timid person.
Yeah.
So her biggest fear is being in front of her peers. So the first thing I do is I give her a positive from me because I'm a stranger. I go, thank you so much for coming. I'm so honored you came up. Thank you. And then I turn to the audience and I say, isn't she a rock star? And they start cheering for her, right? So now I'm getting positive reinforcement from the people she wants to love from.
Yeah.
So I've negated that fear. Next thing that happens is I start talking to her about fishing. I never talked to her about whips. I talked to her about fishing. I say, today I'm going to teach you how to cast a fishing rod the right way. And I said, let me get you a fishing rod. And meanwhile we're having a calm, serene conversation. I said earlier, the most important thing is attitude. The weakest part of your business is the weakest attitude. And so I had to keep her in a calm attitude. So fishing, you talk about fishing, you're talking about calm, serene, relaxed. You talk about whips, you're talking pain, danger, and some people think frisky Friday night, some of them. But we don't go there.
Yeah, right.
All right. I don't want them thinking those things. I want them thinking, I want them thinking about the idea of calm and serene. I say, it's fishing rod. And I say to her, it's the same action. This is just a fishing rod. So now she's thinking fishing. Now I also know that in her subconscious mind is saying, I'm holding a whip. So I turn to the other side of the audience that she's facing, and I get them to make funny fish faces. Right? And I get the whole side of the audience, and now she's laughing, what have I done? I've lightened her mood by getting her laughing at the people in the room, right? So she's having a good time. And I said, all I want you to do now is choose the fish which you hate the most and cast your fishing rod, right? And then she casts her fishing rod and the whip cracks, right? So now I've adjusted her fears all the way through the process. I've managed it all. Now I say, I'm about to put her into a situation where she has to be flexible. I say, so you know how to crack the whip now, don't you? And she goes, I said, did you hear it crack? Yeah. So you already know how to make it crack. You already know how to make it crack. Don't worry about it. You already know how to make it crack. Now, for those of you who are watching the video of this, you'll notice I'm doing this hand swiping action as well. This is a natural action that we all do naturally. If somebody gives you a compliment and you get a little embarrassed, you go, stop.
Yeah.
Oh, stop, right? The reason you do this is because you want it to go away, right? In hypnosis, if you start with a positive reinforcement and you get an acknowledgement of something, so did you hear it crack? Yes, I heard it crack. So you already know how to make it crack. I'm actually dropping an anchor into her brain that she is no longer in the learning phase, she is in the knowledge phase. So I've just shortened her learning curve by a lot. She cracked it twice, now she's already got it, right? That's how fast I can turn it around. Then I pull out a target and I hold a target in my hand. Now I know her next fear is hurting me. That's her biggest fear, is hurting me now. So I say, look at me. You already know how to make it crack. I promise you're not going to hurt me. You know, sometimes when you're leading somebody through something stressful, you got to lie to them.
Right.
No, I'm kidding. I have to realize that if I'm a leader, not a dragger. I'm not dragging her along. I'm leading her along, which means I have to meet her where she is and bring her along with me to where I want her to be. So I'm going to where she is. Where she is the fear of hurting me. If I can go there and take that fear out of her head, then she's back into her cognitive thinking brain. And I say, so you already know, don't worry, I promise you're not going to hurt me. So I took the fear out. I said, all I want you to do is focus right here. So I said, fearlessly focus.
Yeah.
You can do this. I have complete faith in you. Faith, fearlessly focus with faith. I said, just cast your fishing rod. And she casts her fishing rod and hits the target out of my hand. So I got her to fearlessly focus with faith and follow through. The flexibility came when I pulled the actual pretzel stick out that she had to hit, because it was something new that she didn't want to do, right? So I took her through my process. And she does all of that stuff that I just said. All of that happens in under 5 minutes. I mean, literally, by guiding someone through the process. And it's the same process that your customer is going through if you're trying to sell them something. If you can understand where they are in the cycle, you can totally guide somebody through it. If you yourself are trying to see something more in your life, you can totally guide yourself through it. And that's one of the things that I want to make sure that your audience gets today, is this free gift that I give to only podcast audiences.
Yeah.
You won't find it on my website at all. It's the 5F workbook. And what that is it's a workbook to take you through your own 5F process and bring you out the other side, achieving more. Now, I want to be clear about something. I said it's a free gift. When you go to that link, you're not going to find anything for sale on that entire website. And you're also not going to have to put your email address in. This is about bringing value to you, not taking something from you. So dig right in there and grab that.
That's awesome, John. So these 5 Fs we can use in all facets of our life. It's not just, about peak performance. It's something that people can use to improve things personally, or, accomplish certain goals. In the selling process, you can use it. What other areas can you use it that I haven't?
Raising kids. I use my 5F process with my son all the time. And what I find really interesting is he has really come to understand them. And I actually walked into a room one day, and he had some friends. This was before the COVID-19 situation, when people were allowed to come over to your house.
Yeah.
And he had several of his friends over, and 2 of them got into a big argument. And I heard them arguing, and I was like, oh, got to go be dad, right? And, bring my big dad arms into the room.
Yeah.
And I walked around the corner, and I heard my son using the 5 Fs and completely diffused the entire situation. Now, can I share with you a situation that I use this in a very tense business situation?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So I was directing the Tennessee Renaissance Festival, and it's a lovely little fair. And I would increase the attendance. It was the biggest year they'd had. And today was payday. Now, the way actors at Renaissance fairs get paid, they get paid on one contract, but like two pay periods, sometimes 3, depending on how long the fair is. Tennessee had 2, so you get paid halfway through and at the end. So it was payday, and I was out on the fair site, and I had my little spider sense go off. Something's not right. I better go down and check and see what's going on at the office. And I walked in the office, and to my left was the owner of the festival. To my right was one of my top musicians for the event. And they were screaming at each other. And I mean screaming at each other. And now, understand, in this situation, I'm the middle management. I'm the one in between these two. And I just walked into this. I turned to the bookkeeper. I said, what happened? He said, well, the musician's paperwork wasn't correct and his Social Security number's wrong on the paperwork he turned in. And the IRS contacted us and asked us to hold 30% of his pay. So now Salma, what's the fear? So in my mind, I'm going, he's afraid he's not getting his money, and he's afraid the IRS is going to come down on him.
Yeah.
So how can I diffuse this situation? The first thing I have to do is I have to get fault and guilt out of the room. So I walked right in the middle of the fight. I said, guys, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. And they went, oh? I couldn't believe that somebody just walked in and said that. I said, this is a clerical error. I missed it on the paperwork. I should have figured this out a long time ago. I am so sorry. And so everything's calm now. The whole fight just ended, right? I turned to the owner of the festival. I say, listen, he is on one contract, and the IRS wants us to hold 30% of his pay, but he gets 2 checks. Can we take the entire 30% out of his second check and give him his full pay today? Yes, we can. I turn to guy number 2. I say, you're going to get your full check today, and we have a couple weeks to get all this paperwork squared away. I'll come pick you up tomorrow. We'll go down to Social Security, get a copy of your Social Security card, and that resolves the entire thing. You'll get your full pay at the end too. Whole fight was over. What did I do? I took their fear away. I got them focused on a solution, right?
Yeah.
Right. I put faith in it because both of these gentlemen knew me, and they knew that when I said something, I meant something, and my word was good.
Yeah.
So they had faith in me, and I had to take that faith and give them confidence, because my going into it with faith that I'm going to solve this gave them confidence as well. So fearlessly focused with faith. Then I had to get them to follow through, and the way that follow through happened was I literally met him at his campsite and drove him to Social Security myself. right? And got it done. And then at the end, he got his check. So this is the way this works in the real world. This can be done in any situation. This is a natural primal response that every person on earth has.
Yeah.
And if you understand it, you can not only deal with it for yourself personally, but you can lead and guide others and resolve situations. Conflict resolution is much easier when you understand what the primal response is they're going through.
John, this has been fantastic. What last minute words of wisdom do you have?
The simplest words of wisdom I can give is this: remember that today's choices are tomorrow's outcomes. And if you're making today's present moment really successful and positive, then you don't have to have fear, because you're not negatively focused. You're positively focused. So fear will be abated, and you'll achieve more quicker.
Awesome stuff. Now, you had mentioned the free gift. So I know if people go to corporateactionhero.com/free-gift-page, they can get that. We'll make sure that we put that in the show notes. But if they want to learn more about what you're doing and how to engage with you, they can certainly just go right to your website at corporateactionhero.com.
Right. And if you go on that page, you're going to find a daily vlog. Every day I put out a small piece of motivation. I find a quote that I find inspiring, and I kind of expand on it. So, and that is also on YouTube, and I put that out on Twitter and everywhere else as well.
Awesome.
So you'll find just great stuff there. And I also have a podcast that I just started that's on there as well.
Fantastic. If you guys have learned from this, I know I have. You owe it to yourself to go over there, get the free gift, reach out to John if you've got something that you think he can get involved with, speaking and educating people on how to use this 5F system. John, this was fantastic, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to do it.
Oh, thank you. Like I said, to be an action hero, you have to give value and create extraordinary results in service of others. So that's why I do what I do. And just to leave your audience on one thing, there's a difference between an action hero and a superhero. Action heroes are ordinary individuals who create super results. Superheroes are people who wear their underwear on the outside of their pants and usually are irradiated by some sort of goo.
There you have it. That's an awesome way to leave things. So I really appreciate everybody for tuning in. Again, I'm Tim Fitzpatrick with Rialto Marketing. If you want to gain clarity on where to focus your marketing efforts right now, hop on over to our website, rialtomarketing.com. That's RIALTO marketing.com. Click on the Get a Free Consultation button. Guarantee you'll get a ton of value from it and walk away with some clarity knowing what you need to focus on right now. Till next time, take care.